It seems as though Brandon Johnson has decided to pivot. It seems as though Brandon Johnson decided to pivot. Let me bring y'all up to speed. So first and foremost, let me preface this by saying that Chicago is admitting defeat without admitting defeat. Chicago is admitting defeat without admitting defeat. Well, Anton, what do you mean by that? Well, because he don't want to say he was wrong by becoming a sanctuary city. So what he'll do is he'll start to sue the bus companies. They'll start to get mad at people that's bringing these migrants over into their cities. They'll start doing all of that, right? Don't worry about it. Let me bring y'all up to speed on what it is that they decided to do and then how that's starting to play out for them.
5 buses of migrants are expected to arrive in Chicago today as the city adds a new rule around how the city will accept and care for asylum seekers. The new penalty targets private bus operators that don't obey rules on where and when to drop off migrants. Crane's business reports violating the rules currently results in fines ranging from $2,000 to $10,000. Since last summer, 573 buses have arrived here in the city, with 473 of those since May. The new measure is expected to go before the city council next week for.
So consider, now they want to fine you to death. They don't want to say we're no longer a sanctuary city, but what they are going to start doing is try to go after the buses. You don't believe me? Okay.
We have just learned in the last couple of hours that the city of Chicago has impounded a migrant bus for the first time. The city council passing a measure today to start impounding buses that do not obtain a permit from CDOT and don't drop the migrants off at the designated landing zone. Now, after the vote, Mayor Johnson spoke about.
What's up with all of these women that's in Chicago on the news that's wearing these purple outfits? Everybody wearing purple? Is purple like a thing over in Chicago?
The need for the ordinance to make sure new arrivals are brought to an area where city employees are ready to help.
Putting these companies on notice that this blatant disregard of the city regulations will not be tolerated.
The mayor telling us tonight that multiple buses could be impounded.
Watch breaking news.
So now instead of, and I don't even know what kind of, what permit do you get? What kind of permit do you get in order to be able to bring people over in the buses that you were readily accepting as far as making sure that you was taking care of business? Now you feeling some type of way. Oh, the Color Purple movie is coming out? Oh. But anyways, Mayor Brandon Johnson is now under fire. Now under fire. And you know why they're under fire? Why he's under fire? And I believe that I'm the foundation of this fire. But he's under fire on a national level. Now all of the national news networks are starting to have a conversation about the performances going on with Chicago and Brandon Johnson. And one of the reasons that is because they're directly tying crime to the migrant crisis. We already had problems in Chicago and in multiple other cities as far as our inability to be able to support the police, get these crimes in order, make sure that we hold people accountable for their actions. But instead, what did Illinois do? Illinois, they then supported the Safe T Act, which then allowed for and advocated for, similar to what Jay-Z and then was advocating for over in New York and across the United States of America, and that the no bail system and making sure that people can get out and do whatever it is that they wanted to do. So people largely was not held accountable for their crime. And so you combine that with what's going on with the migrant crisis, and you basically have one of the most toxic urban American cities in the history of the United States of America. Let me help you to understand how he's under fire from these national networks.
Yeah. Instead of directing his ire where it belongs, at Joe Biden's administration, Chicago's Democrat Mayor Brandon Johnson has decided to sue bus companies for transporting illegal migrants into his sanctuary city.
Last month, Chicago's City Council passed a series of laws meant to regulate buses dropping off migrants. He's now launched 55 lawsuits against what he's deemed rogue companies for violating the regulations.
So let's be clear. Instead of saying that we were wrong for becoming a sanctuary city, and we need to lay this at the feet of the administration that refused to support our brothers and sisters down there on the southern border, they decide that they want to leverage your tax dollars in order to sue the bus companies that are then profiting off of the idea of driving the migrants up here in the first place. So you don't solve for it at the root of the problem. You just kick the ball down the road and then try to not admit guilt by then leveraging your tax dollars and your legal system and then to pass a bunch of laws that don't actually solve for the problem in order to prevent it and say that it's not my problem. But he's not escaping.
While the mayor's spokesman touts the success of the city's efforts to house migrants in churches and other areas that have brought the number of migrants camped out at O'Hare Airport down from a couple of thousand to just several hundred. Some success.
Here to discuss is Chicago-based journalist William J. Kelly. William, thanks for being with us. Dagan and I talked about this story before we went on, and both of us just thought this is absolutely insane that this guy is suing the bus companies. Can you please explain what's going through his head?
God bless you, Brian and Dagan. Yes, insane is one word. Another word that, as a reporter, I've heard a number of his colleagues as well as members of his own administration off the record telling me incompetent. Mayor Brandon Johnson is not only suing bus companies, but he signed a $29 million contract to build tents for these migrants in the middle of winter. Anyone who's been to Chicago in a winter knows it's Arctic. And get this, as if that weren't bad enough, the tents, he wanted to put the tents on top of a toxic waste dump. So, I mean,
Ain't it funny how a lot of these networks just now starting to catch up to the stuff that we've been talking about over the last year? Isn't it amazing that their audience are so behind on the things that we've been highlighting, bringing to the forefront of the congregation, and putting pressure on? This is why you have to support smaller content creators versus these larger platforms that don't have a clue and is just now starting to try to figure out what's going on in Chicago. By the time that y'all get the news from the larger news networks who basically steal all of our talking points, y'all already messed up. They already sleeping in your airports. They already invaded your city. 500 and plus buses that already came through. 15 million migrants that already came in that they can document, that they can actually track, that came into the city. And so now they want to show up and hold Brandon Johnson accountable.
There are a number of people who are telling me that they don't think Mayor Johnson is going to serve out his full first term because Governor Pritzker does not want any embarrassments during his all-important DNC convention that will be in Chicago in 2024.
The Illinois Environmental Protection Agency had to come in and shut down the construction of those migrant tents. And it was the brave men and women of Brighton Park as part of the city who were so angry about these illegal migrants being housed in their neighborhood. So they were cheering, in essence, the idiocy of their own mayor to try and put the tents on top of toxic waste.
And it's funny, you did Ward Elliott. You actually said it. Detroit has a Republican mayor. I just wonder what Chicago Republicans. Well, let me say this. Our city is moving way different. Our city refuse to become a migrant city. We not embracing none of this nonsense. And so we just quietly building and continuing to repair and getting all of the federal dollars and all of this stuff. And so one of the benefits of having a certain type of mayor, because Mike Duggan is a former executive and he's also formerly the CEO of a major hospital system. So he understands partnerships. He understands how to look at it from a business perspective. He understands how to run a city and also how to recruit and how to spend the majority of our resource dollars on bringing in more businesses, bringing in more tech companies. During his administration, also, one of the things that really took off is Quicken Loans, right? And we revamped and not just became so dependent on the auto industry, but had other industries become a part of what we doing as far as the fabric of the city. Microsoft moved one of their satellite offices down here. Google moved some of their satellite offices down here. University of Michigan became an anchor down here. A lot of the hospital systems and everything started to become down here. And so we started to advertise and recruit more available workers to be here, live, work, and play in all of the same city. So then they had a vested interest in seeing the city to become successful. But when you recruit somebody who's a social studies teacher, what you're going to find is, and I'm going to be honest with y'all, I'm going to be absolutely transparent. Chicago is becoming what Detroit went through in 2008. You guys are one crisis away from losing everything and going bankrupt. Listen, I seen it. I watched it. I've been living here my entire life. And as much as I rag on Chicago, one of the things that I see is you guys going into the exact same direction that we went into when we couldn't solve for our problems going into 2008. And all it takes is one big crisis to continue to upend anything. Right now, they're mismanaging a budget. They over in a deficit. They fighting. They got wrong leadership in there. And so instead of them looking at it from a business perspective, and it doesn't mean that Detroit doesn't have its problems too, but what I'm saying is that you can't have people that don't understand the importance of how to manage a city correctly, but they're a social studies teacher that continue to depend on the church, and then they're supposed to continue to manage all into success. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And now they get national attention.
But on this note, it's the dopery, the profound stupidity of someone who passes laws that allows him to then sue these bus companies, but then won't actually enforce the laws that are on the books that protect the legal residents of the United States and in Chicago and
she
Illinois.
don't even know what she's saying.
There you go, Dagan. There you go, being right again. That's right.
There you go, being right again.
A horrific stabbing. A migrant was stabbed someone on the CTA, the public transportation in Chicago yesterday at 4:00 in the afternoon on State Street, and sadly, the people of Chicago have not seen any improvement in the crime epidemic. And now we have this migrant epidemic that is now devolving into a crime epidemic. People of the city of Chicago have not been adequately warned whenever, there have been numerous crimes committed by migrants. And sadly, they are reported as Chicago man.
So the interesting thing about this, though, is that they're predicting that Mayor Brandon Johnson won't make it past one term. At first, I thought the same thing, but I disagree. I believe that Mayor Johnson, if I have to predict it, I think that y'all going to support Mayor Johnson. I think that first of all, we all know that Chicago was going to have less than a 7% voter turnout rate when it came to y'all election anyway. And then the people that's going to be there is going to be people that's recruited from the church that hold them down. And they going to get the church folks out there to vote for them. And y'all going to be in the same boat that y'all was the year before until y'all find yourselves absolutely in dire straits. And so now you got the mayor at odds with PB Pritzker or whatever his name is, the governor of Illinois. And it's just going to be a S show. It's going to be a SH show. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to spell it because I know that the church is out here listening to